From the front lines of the military to the front lines of business, this is Military to Management. I'm your host, Eamon. Each episode, we uncover how veterans are translating discipline, leadership, and mission-first values into success in today's corporate world. Hey, Matt, good morning. Thanks for joining me on the Military to Management podcast. Appreciate you taking the time out of your day. And excited to talk to you about your military experience and your transition. With that being said, can you give us a little bit of background on you and what you did in the military?
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me. Always happy to talk about transition, help anybody who's either thinking about getting out and making a decision or is on their way out or out and figuring out where they want to head in their new lives. Happy to share my experience and any thoughts that I have gained over the time living in this world, a little bit of military transition. It's there's a lot of ways to get ahead of it, make your best possible decisions. So a little bit about me. I spent 22 years in the Marine Corps, and it is pretty much an even division of active duty and reserve time. I had a short enlisted career, enlisted in the Marine Corps with a college degree, so I had a pretty quick path to an officer program. And my military career was really divided into three distinct periods. That short enlisted time, I was a radio operator in an Anglico company. Then I commissioned as a logistics officer, about 10 years of active duty time as a logistics officer, most of it spent in the special operations world. And then my last period in the reserves was kind of interesting and set me up for some things I wanted to do outside of the military. I first practiced my MOS as a logistics officer, then I completely stepped away from that and went into crisis and emergency management. And that helped me with what I was doing on the outside at the time, and then it's still helping me with a totally different career that I'm in now. So that's in a nutshell what I did.
So a ton of different experiences, different MOSs, different, I guess, categories, active, reserve. So a ton of different widespread experience. What was it like transitioning? I know you probably transitioned off active duty and then you transitioned out of the reserves. Like, can you kind of talk us through those different transitions or whichever one was like the most critical for you?
Yeah, I had a slow transition off of active duty because I was going into the reserves. I had a job lined up to be a firefighter, EMT. And the way I got into that is I really didn't know what I wanted to do. Leaving the Marine Corps, all I knew is my wife was telling me it was time to get off active duty. And she wanted me home a lot, home for dinner every night. She wanted me to stop doing dangerous things, which being a firefighter, EMT, I didn't really listen to her too well. And for me personally, it was an easy transition. And I was just coming off a combat deployment to Iraq, and I still needed the excitement, the camaraderie of that line of work was very natural to what I had been doing. But I hadn't really thought too much about what I wanted to do and where I really was headed. So I used that time effectively once I realized that there was something else out there for me. And I went back to school a couple times. I used the GI Bill very effectively for graduate school twice. Some would say, figure it out once, but I had some time on my hands while I was figuring out what I wanted to do. And then really that second transition was what I think about my real transition out of the military. And we can talk about some of those things later on in the podcast or now if you want about how I used that time.
Yeah, let's dive into it. I'm interested to hear two-time grad school on the GI Bill. I went to grad school once, but if I can do it twice, that'd be awesome. And then, let's talk about kind of your tips and tricks for your transition.
Yeah, I would say that anybody out there who's thinking about a new career or making themselves more of an attractive candidate, really think about how you can use your GI Bill. Whether it's trade school to get a technical MOS or you want to get into commercial aviation and starting to pay for those flight hours, or it's a more traditional path of going to undergrad or graduate school. Just think hard about that because there are so many ways that you can use the GI Bill effectively Don't think about it in the narrow lens of I must go to this specific 4-year or 2-year program to get this degree. There's just so many things out there that you can do with the GI Bill. That investigate it and think about what it is that you really want to do with it. And for me, grad school was a way to not only learn something totally new and make myself a more attractive candidate, it was also opportunities to meet people and think about what other people are doing out there, what might be interesting to me, do internships, and also build a strong network. If one learning lesson for me is to think about where you want to settle. And especially with graduate school programs, they can be very regional in terms of the networks that you build. And I say that in a very positive way. You go to, say, NYU, you're going to build a fantastic network in the Northeast, in New York City, or you go to the USC MBA for Veterans program, you're going to build a fantastic Southern California network. So think about that from a little bit of a regional perspective as well, and what it's going to give you coming out of graduate school. Not just what you're learning in the moment, but what it's going to continue giving back to you after you're finished.
That's such a great, honestly, like great advice and great point. The regionality of the schools that's true. I went to USC, definitely very strong Southern California. I'm sure NYU, very strong on the East Coast. Can you kind of talk us through a little bit, like what were your steps after you got those 2 degrees, and how did you kind of transition into your career path and to where you are now?
Yeah, this is really important. And regardless of what you're going to do, get upstream of it. Start thinking about it as early as you can, and then you're going to want to start networking. You're going to want to start meeting as many people as you can. You're going to want to start examining the opportunities that are out there for you. As an example, the military skill bridge program, where you can do corporate internships and explore different opportunities to see where you might want to be, and then also to have employers take a look at you. There's also the Chamber of Commerce Hiring Our Heroes program is a fantastic resource. But the point is, start thinking about it really early and do as much as you can, because it's a really bad feeling when you're sitting out, 60 days out from your EAS or leaving service and you're just not sure what you want to do. That's a tough position to be in. So start thinking early, build your networks, and by that I mean use everything that you have. All the people that you've known throughout your life, whether it's your high school football team or the college program that you're in, or whatever it is that you have available to you, people that you've known all of your life, get back in touch with them, let them know what you're thinking about doing, solicit their advice. Just start building deep networks, because those are the people who are really going to help you, especially when you're trying to get into the corporate job world. Yeah, it's tough out there right now for a number of job categories, whether you're new degree or you're highly experienced. It's a tough job market, and the thing that is going to get you a job is not throwing out 100 applications. It's having 100 conversations with people, which will then build 10 meaningful relationships, which will then open the doors to getting a look by the HR teams inside those companies where you want to be.
That's great advice. Networking is key. It's how I've gotten all my opportunities, and I'm sure it's probably similar for most folks out there. You said one thing that's interesting. I never heard of the Chamber of Commerce's Hire Heroes program. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's been around forever, and by no means are they the only program out there, but they're really focused on helping veterans and families land after service. As you're transitioning out, they have a ton of resources for yourself, your spouse, to explore what's out there for you and help you land effectively. But again, there could be a better program that in your town or your region. Point is, just start looking at what's out there for you and use all the resources.
As you kind of progress personally in your career, can you kind of walk us through that and to where you are now and any pieces of advice or things that maybe some folks shouldn't do or should do along the way?
Yeah, there's so much, and again, I'm going to get upstream before you take off the uniform because that's where you want to start. Start thinking about yourself, what it's going to look like when you take off the uniform, and yeah, some jobs you can make that direct transition, and the culture and the language and the approaches are the same, but for the most part, it's going to take a little bit of change on your part. You have to be a little bit of a chameleon, and you have to have a little bit of fortitude because people will be different. The working environments are going to be different. The expectations that you might have of the people around you, they may not meet those. It's just, it's a different world. And you personally, you have to think about yourself differently. It's just because you're a squad leader or you're a battalion commander or you're a highly experienced technical specialist doesn't mean that's going to be a direct translation on day one. You're going into a different environment. They may not understand or fully appreciate all the things that you've done and all the things that you're capable of. So you're going to have to take a step back possibly, and maybe one step down to in a few years get a couple steps ahead. Just realize that's coming, and then think about the cultural change. It's how you talk to people, how you describe your experience in the military, how you describe what you want to be. Put work into that because it's all different. Everything you've done in the service is very applicable, and I'll get to that in a second. But you're entering into a different world that you're asking to enter. Think about how you're a chameleon and you become the person who is in that world with how you dress, how you talk, how you deal with your new teammates. All those things are going to require some change. So that's why, going back to the networking thing, have conversations with people about places that you might want to end up and really understand what their worlds are like and how you can put yourself into that world.
That makes, I mean, that rings true. A couple of the things you just said there. I mean, definitely don't. Everybody needs to watch how they talk. Civilians definitely don't like to get blasted and can get to HR. Um, yeah, that's great advice. Is there anything that you want to kind of guide us through, like on your career? Because I know you had a great role at Starbucks, and then you've catapulted a couple times. Definitely want to hear about that, because your career is a great example of how you can kind of leverage some of the things that you're talking about.
Yeah, so as I was hit this inflection point in life, I was about to finish an MBA program, and I was retirement eligible from the fire department that I was working in, and I was ready to retire from the Marine Corps Reserve. So I had this big inflection point of this is my next step forward, and it was the networks that helped me. It was really getting out there. I knew where I wanted to live, where I wanted my family to be, so I started networking heavily on LinkedIn. And you have to throw a lot of invites out there to people to have conversations and just explain a little bit who you are, what you're interested in, and would they give you 30 minutes of your time. And your success rate, yeah, it's going to be varied. Some places, depending on the network that you are using, will say absolutely happy to talk, or you may only get a 20% return rate. You have to get out there, put yourself out there, and then those conversations, just listen, solicit advice on where you think you want to go, and then ask them for other connections. Do you have anybody in your network that you think would want to talk to me or would be valuable for me to talk to? And that's what worked for me. I really used my Marine Corps network in the Pacific Northwest, and that led to a couple introductions, which then led to the right veteran at Starbucks who said something to the person who was hiring about a role that wasn't even posted and I didn't even know about. I was in the interview process for a totally different role using my logistics background, at Starbucks when I through a connection from the Marine Corps, I ended up being interviewed to go into the Veterans and Military Affairs program, and it all worked out for me. And it was an amazing 7 years. I led the strategy that supported both the military and the public safety communities. After a year and a half, I was promoted, took over the program. I led it, and then I was able to pivot it at a certain point towards mental health and providing more mental health resources because I thought that was the greatest need and the best use of what Starbucks brought to the table. So all these doors opened up for me just by having those conversations with veterans out there who are happy to help, happy to make introductions for you and share their advice and networks. So, like I said, get out there early and remember your success rate can be high or low on people responding, but you have to do it over and over until you find that right thing.
I love how you talk through that because obviously in any type of, I guess, business, marketing, networking, you're going to get a lot of denials, but it's worth it, obviously, in the end, when you get an opportunity that you might not even have, I guess you didn't even think you were eligible for, and then you ended up having 7 great years. What was that role like? What was, a day, typical day or week like in that role where you were leading that, large initiative across one of the biggest companies in America?
Yeah, I'll talk about the initial period because I was an absolute chameleon. And I think they were watching me very closely. Like, is this guy going to transition effectively? Is he culturally the right fit? Coming out of the Marine Corps, they saw my experience in the special operations community. And then most recently, I was coming from riding on a fire truck. And they obviously saw things about me that they liked, but I think they're also watching me to see, is this person a cultural fit? And I just went in there, totally different environment, a world that I had never been in and didn't have any experience in, and I was a chameleon. Ears open, eyes open, mouth shut most of the time, and just listened, learned, talked to people, and I remember, 6 months in, it hit me clearly one day, like, okay, I'm starting to get this. I'm starting to understand, how I can operate effectively in this environment, how I can be really good at my job. So it was that listening and learning period that was really important. And then, it was off from there. And for me, I was fortunate that, I was surrounded by other people that served. Starbucks has a great military network, veterans and military spouses. So I was surrounded by some fantastic people. But then externally, when I was working with other companies, their military networks or military service organizations and veteran service organizations or government programs, I was fortunate that I was working with a lot of people who had a common mission, which was to help veterans, military spouses, and military families transition effectively. And for me, the path that I saw to success for the Starbucks strategy was building those strong partnerships and leveraging the Starbucks resources effectively. I looked at, kind of you're building an intelligence assessment, you're building that target folder, understanding the environment, the mission, who you're going after. That's all the same when you take off the uniform. So I did that survey to really understand what my resources are, who my teammates were, what we're going after, and then started building those relationships and leveraging what I had available to me very effectively.
I love how you tied that into things that folks do in the military. For those guys and gals who are thinking about getting out or recently got out, how do they connect with or leverage these military programs or veteran transition programs in big companies? Like, do you have any advice on how to kind of navigate that or research that or get connected with that?
Yeah, it's LinkedIn's your best tool. I mean, yes, it has its faults and it's turned into a little bit of a social network. You have to filter all of that out, but use that really effectively to build those connections, to see, to learn what you will like, are interested in, and not interested in. It's a very, those conversations also very effective for figuring out, wow, I just don't see myself working there, or what this person is saying, probably not the best work environment for me or overall. So use that, depending on your individual base or unit that you're serving in at a higher level. Take a look at those transition resources, but don't get discouraged if they're not comprehensive, if they're not applicable to you. It's just, it's service and location dependent if they have effective resources available to you or not. But again, don't get discouraged if you're not seeing what you want to see. Keep digging deeper, because there's a ton of opportunity out there. And also think about yourself. I've had so many conversations with people who are thinking about transitioning out of the military, and they saw a direct line to their job because of some preconceived notion. I'm a MP, or I'm in combat arms, therefore I should go into law enforcement or be a firefighter. Or I'm working in this specific technical MOS in the military, therefore I should have a direct line to that. If you don't want to do that, all the power to you. You can be whatever you want to be, and so don't think about yourself as being typecast because of what you did in the military. Think about what it is that's out there, and even if you don't know, don't get yourself typecast into a job. There's just, the world's open to you, and I've had some great conversations with people highly experienced. They're getting ready to retire after 20 plus years, and when they have that moment of enlightenment, like, no kidding, I can go do that thing that's totally different. I hadn't really thought about that. So just think openly as to where you want to go.
That's yeah, great advice, and you definitely need to expand your horizons um, when you're getting out. Uh, Question for you, Matt. You've had all this great experience, led a pretty significant team at a large company. Are there any, and I know you've kind of talked a little bit about it already, but are there any like specific traits or habits that you took from your time in the Marines that are continuing to serve you well now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to stress on this. Yes, you need to be a chameleon and totally change your spots, your stripes. You're taking off that uniform, but you want to retain everything that you've learned and who you become from the military, because that's going to serve you so well. All of those unique traits, those personal habits, those values that you learn in the military or you further develop in the military, they're always going to be very, very valuable. You know how to work hard. You know how to get up early and be there before anybody else is there. You know how to think about the team and how to use a team effectively. You know how to survey your landscape and then apply all of the information and the intelligence you're gathering from that survey to best affect that strategy, that mission, that goal, whatever it is that you're going after. All those things are really, really valuable. You're just applying them, with a slightly different lens and slightly different language, but it's all things that you're going to rely on and are going to set you apart from people around you that have not served in the military.
Yeah, that's great. All those things. The getting up early thing, obviously, leading the teams. Not a lot of that, or I guess if you come up just via the corporate environment, you don't have a lot of exposure to leading teams. So that's definitely something important. Could you define like maybe one or two things about your military service, your time in the Marines that prepared you for those big leadership roles? Was it like those traits that you just talked about, or was there a specific billet or a specific thing that happened that you can translate to your time leading those big teams at Starbucks?
Yeah, I would say it's building effective relationships and effective teams. And it doesn't matter what level you're serving in in the military. Say you get out after 4 years, and you've served in a technical shop. Say you're in a maintenance shop, or you're in a infantry squad. You know what it's like to have to work in hard conditions with people who might be different than you. Sometimes you may not even like them, but you have that experience in developing relationships and working effectively in teams and treating people well. With respect, with honesty, caring about other people, motivating people to do the mission. Those are all things the basic fundamentals of teamwork and working with others is really, really valuable in the military or in the civilian world, same as you did in the military, because you're going to run into that in the corporate world, or whatever it is outside. You're going to find people who are different than you. You might not necessarily want to hang out with them when you're out of work, but you have to work effectively with them, and you've learned all those things. And then you've also learned, how to think beyond yourself and about other people and the success of the mission. Being goal-oriented, mission-oriented. People without that military experience may not get that, and you've got a step ahead, and that's been really valuable for me throughout, regardless of what level I've been working at.
Yeah, having a mission and completing the mission definitely is super valuable.
And it all starts with the team. It all starts with the people, regardless of how technical your job is on the outside in the corporate world. It doesn't matter. It all starts with the people and building effective teams.
Amazing. Yeah, everything that you're saying, I 100% agree with, and makes a ton of sense. As we kind of wrap up here, if there was somebody out there that wanted to kind of take a similar path to you, is there any advice you would give them? I know you've given about 30 minutes of great advice, but is there like one piece of specific advice, whether it's polish your LinkedIn or really focus on like what is that one piece of advice that can help get somebody promoted to like a large leadership role in corporate America?
I mean, coming out of the military, like I said, start with the networking, because you're going to talk to the people, you're going to discover things you didn't know, they're going to open doors for you that you might not have had open for you otherwise. And it's also going to be that environment where you're watching people, you're emulating what they're doing, you're taking away great things from their LinkedIn profiles. From the conversations, you're also going to get things that you don't want to use, and I don't want to be like that person, right? I see this trait, I'm going to make sure I don't do that. Start with really getting out there, building your network on LinkedIn. It's just it's the best game in town. Not perfect, but it's what the best tool out there. So start doing that, and then as you're in the corporate environment, never stop learning. And I think that's one of the things. After I left Starbucks, I probably would have changed it a little bit. I did fantastic work there. I absolutely loved what I did on the military side, but I had this amazing corporation, company in front of me where I could have learned 10 new jobs or gone after 10 different careers within Starbucks. And because I was so focused on the mission at the time, that I wasn't expanding my mind and thinking about what else might be out there for me that I could have gotten into at Starbucks on a lateral shift. And there's a lot of companies out there that allow you to do something totally different after you've proven yourself internally. And in retrospect, for me, I probably would have taken advantage of some of those opportunities and done a couple of different jobs, so that I learned totally new skills and made my resume even more broad. So that's my lesson. Once you get into corporate America, never stop learning, looking at the opportunities that are available to you, and whether you're happy with what you're doing, being curious and learning about those other programs may serve you if you stay in the field that you're in, or if you want to transition and do something totally different.
I love that. Continuous learning. advice. For everybody listening, Matt and I connected on LinkedIn, so he's right. LinkedIn is a very powerful tool. That's how we got connected, and that's how we started this, got on this podcast together. Is there anything else, anything for the listeners? How do they look you up? How do they get in contact with you? I think I know the answer, but if they're interested in, hearing more, getting some advice.
Yeah, just like you did, you hit me up on LinkedIn. You told me a little bit about yourself and what you were doing. And sure, happy to talk to another Marine or somebody who's served, who's helping others make an effective transition out of the military. So, those couple things, yeah, let's have a conversation. And then, learned a little bit about you. I got fascinated by, the fact that you're not only helping people transition, but you also have this totally different role. You're chief operating officer, and you're using all of your time in the Marine Corps to go after opportunities and build business. That was interesting to me. So I'm out there on LinkedIn. You can connect with me, and happy to talk.
Awesome. Well, Matt, I appreciate your time today. Super insightful. The networking focus is something new to this podcast, so I'm very appreciative of you sharing all that, and I 100% agree that it's one of the most important things that anybody can do. And thanks for waking up early to talk with us this morning.
Yeah, happy to be here. I hope my experience and some of my thoughts were helpful for people. Just, remember, you're taking so many great things away from your time in the military. It's going to be a little bit hard transition. Hang in there. There'll be moments where you think nothing's going to work, nobody's responding to you. You're not finding what you had hoped to find. It's hard. I mean, especially now, current economic climate, hopefully it pivots quickly. It's a tough job market, but it doesn't mean that there's not great opportunities out there. You just have to be diligent and you have to persevere. We know how to do that after serving in the military, regardless of the branch that you're in. You just have to keep pushing and things will line up for you.
Well, Matt, appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Amazing. Thank you to our guest for sharing their journey from the military to corporate leadership. We'll be back soon with more stories of veterans proving that success doesn't end with a uniform. It begins a new mission. This is Military to Management with your host, Eamon.